what do mobile phones have in common? All mobile phones, irrespective of any brand, or any feature or capacity, they all have something called as semiconductor chips. And guess which country makes the largest number of semiconductor chips in the world? Taiwan. And guess what is the percentage of semiconductor chips that Taiwan makes? 70%, ladies and gentlemen, 70 till date. Taiwan is the global semiconductor hub. Taiwanese companies are the guys who are pushing semiconductor technology forward, to the point where 90% of all advanced chips made in the world come from Taiwan. 70% of all semiconductor chips and 90% of all advanced chips come from Taiwan. And now it looks like Taiwanese companies are making a beeline to set up their manufacturing plant in India. And this is not just a rumor, but this is an inference from a statement made by a Taiwanese minister, to the effect that, in emerging and critical technologies, Taiwanese companies want to set up their production base here in India. That's fantastic news, isn't it, Karthik and Amit? Amit, you'd like to go first.
Yeah, it is. It's part of the whole decoupling and China plus one move that is happening globally. So, and India is the biggest benefactor along with Vietnam and Indonesia. But this is part of that. But Taiwan is looking very big towards India is good news for India, because the people basically wooing the semiconductor chip market in a big way are Vietnam. And if we are getting it, so that is very, very good news coming from a minister from Taiwan.
So in the sense that just because you have these problems going on in China and company ownership, manufacturing, it's not a straight road for India. You have so much competition from smaller nations who can offer a better price,
yes,
differentiator at much lesser cost when it comes to manufacturing. So India has to be on its toes. But the fact of the matter is that a fair amount of traffic is coming our way, including all the traffic from Taiwan.
So look at it holistically, Krishna. Look at the political stability India has demonstrated.
Right.
I think for doing business in India, this was always a major concern. It's something which is referred to as nation risk, right, or country risk.
Correct.
India's country risk has reduced drastically. And this is the country risk is a function of political stability. It's a function of law and order. It's a function of number of terrorist attacks going down. So overall well-being of personnel, well-being of the plant that you've set up, and safeguarding, protecting that. Of course, the fourth one is ease of doing business, which India has been, some reports say India has been surging up, some reports say that no, India has been stagnant, and many say that no, India has not really broken any ground. But forget ease of business, doing business for now. The fifth, of course, is enforcement of contracts. These are constituents that add country risk and give a score to it. So so enforcement of contracts is still something that India needs to work on, given the fact that number of legal cases still pending hearing are huge, and we don't really still have completely digitized records of legal cases, etc. But keep all that aside, look at the enabling environment that India has begun to offer now. Number one, to begin with, the PLI scheme. 50%, let's say the investment of a certain unit is X. 1/2X is the only investment required by the investor, and the remaining half comes from the Indian PLI scheme. So why would a country or a factory or an industry not want to take advantage of that, given the fact that overall India's focus is shifting, if not another focal point is being added in the manufacturing realm instead of just focusing squarely on services.
Right.
So services, manufacturing and agriculture, of course, being the hot belt, we are now sort of completing our economic cycle when it comes to production, and manufacturing becomes a major flag bearer here. So PLI scheme, overall low country risk, political risk, access to a large labor market, and that labor market, of course, needs training, and there are labor reforms which are pending. But if you're able to skill that labor, and if you're able to pay that labor adequately, that labor is going to migrate to your factory than work anywhere else. So overall, the environment has become enabling. And add to that the number of cars we are making, the number of smartphones we are making, the same factory wanting to supply these semiconductors from Taiwan, ship them to India, versus make them in India and use the railway network or the road network. The economics are obviously going to work better for them. in any case, we have the likes of Foxconn and Pentagon and Winston already in India, making in India. Now, add another, apparently one more factory has confirmed, one more industry has confirmed entry. Now, which one that is, I don't know. But yeah, so I think the trend lines are fairly clear that political risk is low, country risk is low, economic stability is there, and overall there's an enabling environment. So it makes complete sense to take advantage of the labor available in India, the land available in India, and make in India.
Right. And
Talking about land available and two exclusive industrial parks
Yes, I was
have been
just about to talk
promised
about
to these Taiwanese semiconductor chip firms.
Right.
They'll be exclusive to only Taiwan companies. So that is how far India is basically going towards wooing the semiconductor market towards India, manufacturing towards India.
Right, fascinating, isn't it, Karthik? We have an industrial park. This sort of like takes us back to the SEZ era.
Exactly.
So you create a special economic zone. You want to call it SEZ, call it SEZ. You want to call it industrial park, call it industrial park. But the idea is to create that enabling environment that you're talking about, for companies to want to rush into India and start setting up business right away, because nobody wants to waste any time, because there is the semiconductor crisis has been dealt with. But I don't think we are ready to make the amount of semiconductors that the future demand is for semiconductor chips. One more point I want to agree on, as Karthik was talking about, is the manpower required. Even as India has ambitions to become this global semiconductor hub, another report states that the manpower requirement is going to go up 5 times in the next 2 years to staff all these semiconductor chip making companies. So that's something that's very important to note here as well.
Totally, employment.
Generating employment and making sure that we have the right skilled employment to offer all these companies, when they want to set up shop over here. That will be crucial, how India manages to meet the manpower needs. There is the infrastructure, logistical needs, and of course the push in the form of
Policy.
PLI policy that you're giving, but we will need that manpower push as well. Karthik, the one thing I want to ask is that at this level, there needs to be government level coordination clearly between the Taiwanese government and the Indian government. And I want to understand how this will impact global geopolitics. If India is going to cozy up too much to Taiwan and Taiwanese companies and offering them all these special incentives, there are going to be questions being raised, eyebrows being raised for sure.
But I think it is squarely in India's interest right now to cozy up to Taiwan, given the tension between Taiwan and China.
Right.
Taiwan is definitely not interested in doing business with China, as China continues to do air sorties and what they call routine exercises around the borders and around the Taiwanese straits. So I think it is completely in India's interest now to ensure that this decoupling of China and Taiwan happens completely, and Taiwan moves business to India versus China, and it is in Taiwan's economic interest as well. Tomorrow, in case there is a war-like situation between China and Taiwan, Taiwan's economy is not going to be dependent on China alone. It has a much stronger play when India has economic relations with Taiwan and wants to safeguard those economic relations in an adversity of, let's say, a war or any sort of aggression between China and Taiwan. Now, coming back to PLI, Krishna, PLI was one of the incentives open across multiple sectors, but there was also the government of India's push to invest 10,000 crore rupees into semiconductor manufacturing, and that project had not taken off up until now. So this 10,000 crore rupees waiting to be spent in the coffers of the government of India, waiting to be deployed into semiconductor manufacturing. Now that takes off, hopefully, with Chinese investments coming into India through setting up of semiconductor plants, and look at the multiplier that is going to have on, let's say, the auto industry, on the electronics industry, on the smartphone manufacturing industry, and not just in adding efficiency, but also reducing prices for India, because the entire logistics cost of importing these semiconductors, paying duty on them, and the logistics of supply chain getting them from Taiwan to India pretty much come to an end. And now add to that one more element of the GST you collect by way of this manufacturing happening in India. So overall, look at the multiplier. So I think any investment coming into India is absolutely welcome, and something which is critical to India's manufacturing prowess, being semiconductors, coming into India is obviously great. So Micron had set that ball rolling when PM Modi was in the US. Allied Materials had seconded that. Hopefully Tesla will also make an entry at some point, but until then, I think these Taiwanese companies coming into India is great.
Can't wait for Tesla to come to India, but as you're rightly pointing out, in terms of economic impact, the fact that India's ambitions to become a global semiconductor manufacturing hub is taking off is very, very important because of the multiplier effect that you are talking about. I also want to just put things in perspective. The fact of the matter is that ever since the trade ties went sour between Beijing and Washington, between the US and China, you have Taiwan saying the fact that they are looking to diversify and reduce their dependence on China, Karthik, and that's also very important. Taiwan itself wants to reduce its over-dependence on China, and it's been looking to shift its production bases to across the world, to anywhere from Europe to North America to Southeast Asia and India as well. And clearly, because of India's policy making, Taiwan is finding it easier to choose India as an option. Taiwanese companies are finding it easier to use China as an option, and strategically speaking, not just for India, for Taiwan too, having a portion of its economic fortunes, are based out of India, strategically is very important as well for Taiwan per se, and that's the reason why you're seeing, Taiwanese companies, pushed by their own government, are coming to India. All roads lead to India as far as Taiwanese chip makers are concerned, and here's hoping that more and more Make in India continues to happen here in India.